Alrighty. It is another wonderful Saturday. Just want to take the opportunity to say I'm very happy with everything that I'm blessed with. Live in the United States, got my freedom of speech, got the ability to spend a couple of hours on a Saturday morning complaining and criticizing and critiquing my government, and the ability to provide constructive feedback to the masses. If I was living in a lot of other countries, I wouldn't be able to do that. I would be basically forced to endure without a voice. With that said, I think that's important for us to remember each and every time we want to gather and do that silly thing called have a redress of our grievances. We need to remember that there's a lot of people in a lot of countries around the world that can't do this. And truth is, I think a lot of things going wrong in this country could be fixed pretty quickly if the masses unified and said, you know what, we're not going to tolerate that anymore. We're going to make some positive changes. We want to see a positive change in our country, in our government, in our future. And really, the only way we can do that is by looking at each and every individual issue and saying what's wrong with this. Now, this one's going to be, pretty inflammatory because I'm going to be talking about election reform. What's up, T-Elf? I'm going to be talking about election reform today. And the biggest part is the U.S. is in desperate need of statesmen. I'm going to say this, and it's going to be, inflammatory. Barack Obama was a statesman. Donald Trump is not a statesman. Joe Biden, not a statesman. Barack Obama is definitely like the textbook example of a person called to serve, joined the Senate. Now, did have some integrity issues while in the Senate because said, I will not run for president, but was then called to run for president and ran for president. And then, honestly, if you think about President Obama has stayed out of a lot of things since the end of his second term. Really, really honorable way to do it. I mean, President Obama is young enough that could be rattling the saber. Let's change the amendments. Let's revoke the amendment that prevents the president from serving more than 2 terms. I'm pretty certain that the whole country would get behind a constitutional convention to bring President Obama back. I truly believe that. It doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right, you're a Democrat or a Republican. Looking down the barrel of the 2024 election, if President Obama could come out of retirement and serve another 2 terms, I think he'd win in a landslide walk. Don't know if he'd want it, but we're going to talk about statesmen here in just a second, about how a good statesman would want it. One of the things, it's kind of a joke, great men do not seek power, they have power thrust upon them. It's a Star Trek quote, but it's, pretty important, pretty relevant. The story of Lucius Quintus Cincinnatus, the guy that Cincinnati is named for, he was an opponent of the rights of the plebeians. He was an opponent of the rights to the common people. Is this fine? He's allowed to have that opinion. He is perfectly entitled to have that opinion. It may not make him popular, and it may be why he and his family fell into poverty. But the interesting part is, when you talk about Cincinnatus, there was a pending invasion, and the citizenry of Rome called upon him to lead the army. And in order for him to properly lead the army, they named him dictator, giving him all the powers of the state. From plow to power, he achieved a victory over the invaders in only 15 days. He was in power for 16 days, but he achieved his victory in 15 days. At which time, he gave up his power, his absolute power, and he gave it back to the state, and he returned to his farm. This actually happened a second time in his life, where again, he was on his poor farm. Representatives of the Senate came to him, told him to don his toga. He was given the power, the mantle of dictator. The second time he served for 21 days, and again, relinquished power at the end of the crisis. Interestingly enough, his master of horse, head general, the second time was actually tried for treason and abuse of power. So noble, so highly respected, so highly regarded was Cincinnatus that one of his younger sons was put on trial for military incompetence. And the son's lawyer said to the jury, "I understand that you may find him guilty, but which among you will travel to Cincinnatus's farm to render upon him the verdict?" And no juror could bring himself would have been all men. No juror could bring himself to vote the son guilty because no juror wanted to bear the responsibility of traveling out and telling this statesman, this powerful statesman who has saved the republic twice, that your son is guilty. This is really, I tell this story, and I've done this for years. If we don't start getting some statesmen in our government, then we're going to continue having politicians who spend their entire lives trying to accumulate power. And it's funny because I think back on my life, and I thought, when little kid, they tell you to write what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be president. Why? Because I want to be powerful. No, you should never. The moment you have a country whose goal in its young people is to be president, there is a fundamental flaw in your country. That's right. You have a fundamental flaw in your country because people are striving for power. We need another generation. We need a modern day Cincinnatus. We need there to be a crisis. We need to have the right person solve one particular crisis, and then move on and go back to whatever it is they were doing. And you hear me talk about we have the school reform crisis. We have the vocal minority trying to make everything a crisis. We have lots of things. We have lots of things that we can take one of them and make that the issue for the time being. We need to reteach people. Like we can't change the system unless we do school reform. And then we can't have unity unless we have gender fairness, or is it gender equality? Because I'm still not sure after that podcast which one it is we want. Do we want gender fairness or gender equality? One thing I want to talk about today is election reform itself. And I saw this quote, and I believe the quote is from Warren Buffett. If you want to ensure that our Congress, and I've modified this a little bit. If you go looking for this quote, I've taken Warren Buffett's quote. I've modified it a little bit because I think there's a little bit more to say. If you want to ensure that our Congress always passes a balanced budget and clean bills with no pork, then the states must call for a constitutional convention and pass a new amendment that states anytime the budget isn't within 3% of the gross domestic product, every sitting member of Congress becomes ineligible for re-election. I'm going to tell you right now, that's going to get some attention. That's going to get some attention to the senators and the representatives who can't be bothered to read 4,400-page bills. They can't be bothered to actually do their job because they're too busy trying to set themselves up for service jobs. We'll talk about those a little bit later. I don't think that we can solve election reform by every time I see election reform, it's talking about how much money can people contribute? How much money can an individual person kick in to a election campaign? What is the maximum donor? I keep hearing this, and I've always laughed about it. You see, election reform is done under the guise of election funding. Well, maybe I'm crazy, but are the poor people donating $2,500 to an election campaign. I don't think poor people, remember I have a video where I talk about taxing people into poverty. We're talking about, we want to have a minimum wage of $31,000 or a living wage of $31,800. But now we're talking about maximum contributions to a political campaign. I don't think that is going to play out right. Looking this up, an individual can donate up to $36,500 per year in candidate donations. So you're telling me that your ability or your theory on election reform is to pass a law that says an individual can only contribute $36,500 to a political campaign, yet a living wage is going to be $31,800. This is where I believe that the politicians have completely lost touch with the people, and they need to all be removed. And we as a country need to start electing better people. It makes absolutely no sense to me. You want to a candidate, you can contribute $2,900 per election. You can donate $5,000 to a PAC. You can donate $10,000 to a party. And you can donate $36,500 to a political national party. Who has this money? Who has this money? Because I know that the people that are trying to make ends meet, they're trying to find a side hustle, they don't have this kind of money to be thrown. Like, they're not worried. Trust me, the working poor, the plebeians, the common people of 2022 in America are not stressing over the fact, oh man, I was really looking forward to donating $40,000 to this political campaign, but you passed that law that says I can only do $36,500. Meanwhile, I don't have enough money for bread or milk or eggs or shoes or clothes or medicine. This is how out of touch it really has become. What if we said you're not allowed to donate more than 1% of your previous year tax return to a political campaign? But don't forget, when you file your taxes, they're going to ask you if you want to donate $3. It's absolutely, positively out of control. And that leads me to the other big part of election reform. In America, we used to vote a completely different way. The Electoral College has always been present, but the way the president and the vice president got elected was different. And we talk about the 1796 and the 1800 and the 1804 elections, and after the way that those all panned out, we changed the structure of the elections. And so you can't talk about one without talking about the other. So let's start with the Electoral College. The Electoral College was basically designed to ensure that the uneducated masses didn't cast their votes for undesirable candidates. A lot of you are thinking, wait, no, that's not what I learned in school. I learned about states' rights. Well, yeah, but the Electoral College was created in order to make sure that the masses, the unwashed, dirty, sweaty masses, the uneducated, illiterate masses, didn't cast their votes for an undesirable. Because remember, other than at the time, states didn't have to pay any attention to the popular vote. And in most states, they still don't. In most states, the electorate can cast their vote for whoever they want. There is this guise, this dressing, this nicety that we wanted to ensure that there was extra power given to the smaller states, so that states will always have the same minimum number of votes in the presidential election, equal to the number of senators they have plus their representatives. Vermont, very small state, population-wise, Vermont only has 3 electoral votes, 2 for its senator, and Vermont has had 1 representative for as long as I can remember. Now, again, the way the House of Representatives works, I think that entire thing needs to be changed. I love the idea when we drafted the Constitution that we were going to give every state equal votes in the Senate, but weighted votes in the House based on their population. I think there's a fundamental flaw of Vermont having only one representative. I think every state should have 2 representatives minimum, and then the lion's share goes to California, Texas, Florida, Illinois, Pennsylvania, New York, those populated states. California has 54 electoral votes because they have 2 senators and 52 representatives in the House. That's a lot of weight California carries. Most states in the Electoral College, like I said, are all or nothing. If you win California, you get 54 votes. Maine and Nebraska do split voting by district. Maine, I believe, is the state that does split voting by district, and then if you take 2 of the 3, you get an extra vote. Really weird thing to me, but it's their state. I believe in states' rights. They can vote. They can cast however they want. You need 270 votes in the Electoral College to win the presidency. If you can manage to pull California, Texas, Florida, New York, Illinois, and Pennsylvania, that gets you 190 out of your 270. Now, if you were to pull all 6 of those states, you'd be doing something right because of the different demographics. California and New York, very Democratic leaning. Florida, very Republican. Well, used to be very Republican leaning. Now, not so much anymore. Texas used to be very Republican leaning. Not so much anymore. Illinois is very Democratic. Pennsylvania tends to do whatever Pennsylvania wants to do. So if you manage to pull all 6 of those states, you're probably a statesman. You're probably hitting all the markers we want you to hit. But you can win the presidency with 13 states. Leaving 37 states is basically the nobodies. If you can ignore the entire Northwest. You don't need to pay any attention to the entire Northwest. You can ignore like Washington through the Dakotas, and then as far south as Nevada, Colorado, and Kansas. If you can manage to pick up Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, and like 3 other states, you want to pick up Nevada. I'm sorry, not Nevada. Arizona. If you pick up Arizona, you're picking up all the double-digit states that you need. You get, you've picked up 13 states, and you've won the presidency. What about the rest of the population? Over 58 elections, only 94 times have gone against their state and did not cast their votes for the state results, president or vice president. Really not a problem? Yeah, it's not a problem. It isn't. It isn't. We're gonna get to the popular election piece. In fact, it's the next thing. In the last election, 81 million votes were cast for Joe Biden. 74 million votes were cast for Donald Trump. I think what Grumpy Old Man said. You look at 58 elections, only 94 times has an elector gone against their state. I don't think we need the Electoral College anymore. And I'm saying this as a member of the political party that needs the Electoral College to win elections. I think that it's pretty evident that 81 million people cast their vote for Joe Biden, 74 million cast their vote for Trump. We don't need the Electoral College anymore. The Electoral College was a great idea back when it took several days to travel to Washington from Colorado, Oregon, California, Washington State, where your electors would have to know how to vote, get on a train, take themselves there. Now it's modern technology. The big piece here is 51.3% of people got the president they wanted, and 48.7% didn't. It's really hard to unify a country when you divide the scenario into haves and have-nots. And this is something I say all the time. It's not a popularity contest. It's probably the most important election on the planet every 4 years. Why is it the most important election on the planet every 4 years? Because you're talking about the leader of the free world. You're electing the leader of the free world. Oh, it's just the leader of the United States. Because the president doesn't have a massive amount of pull and a massive amount of sway in NATO, the UN, where we send our own military, how we protect and preserve those freedoms and democracies that we decide we want to protect. I think having the right person behind the big red button is an important thing. But again, 51.3% of people got the president they wanted. 48.7% didn't. That's not a unified country. That's a divided country. That's a house divided. And as Abraham Lincoln said, a house divided cannot stand. I think we need to go back to the president and vice president method, where the person with the most votes should be president. The runner-up is vice president. Like it used to be. Like the founding fathers intended. Because every 4 years we have a spectacle of an election, and during that time, one candidate who represents a party goes after the candidate from the other party, and vice versa, and they get mean and they get nasty and they throw shade and they expose everybody's dirty secrets. And not only do they do this mudslinging in an attempt to win the election, but also to weaken their opponent in case their opponent wins, to make it so that they can't accomplish the things they want. Imagine how different the last 8 years would have been if Donald Trump had been forced to have Hillary Clinton as his vice president. Imagine how different things would be right now if Joe Biden was forced to have Donald Trump as his vice president. People would actually have to behave. The world, Washington, would have been a way different place, would have been shaped way differently if President Obama had John McCain as his vice president. I think that the opportunity to unify the parties was missed. I believe that a President Obama president and a Vice President John McCain would have made a better world instead of Joe Biden being Barack Obama's vice president. If that was the rule, I don't think Joe Biden wins right now. I think that if there hadn't been a Joe Biden vice president, then the Democratic Party would have had to go shopping for a better candidate. Why is this important? It's all about unity versus division. As it is right now, the elections are always a one party is the winner and one party is the loser. We should not have losers when it comes to our political elections. Now, I get it on the lower levels. The lower levels, you're going to have people who won and people who did not win. But it's a big problem. Right? It's a huge problem because nobody can get anything done right now. You guys know that I talked about the representative on, I can't remember which representative it was, and forgive me, that's bad on my part. I should have made a better note. But he was there at like midnight, because you can read into the House notes all the time, reading in facts and figures and notes. And then he was there and he was talking to the chairman. There was a vote passed on that funding bill with not a physical quorum present. There was not a physical quorum of representatives in presence. They have changed the rules. They have changed the rules of the House, where as long as there is a voting quorum present, meaning there is a designated person to vote by proxy for all the people who don't want to be present, then that's acceptable. I think that if you can't get 270 members of the House on the floor of the House, or 218, I guess. 218, wrong number. If you can't get 218 members of the House on the floor of the House, you shouldn't be voting on bills. He talked about how they were trying to push through a bill with less than 3 days notice. It was a 4,400-page bill, and they wanted to hold a vote on it with less than 3 days notice. How do you how do you have a vote when there's no debate? How do you talk about? I believe it's set up the current way in order to allow them to get things done. The amount of sniping leaks it would take place, if second place VP would be astronomical. Yeah, but here's the thing. If to go, we'll walk back to that point. The president versus the vice president. The amount of sniping and leaks that would take place if the second place was vice president would be astronomical. Well, then guess what? That would easily identify us that person shouldn't be in office anymore. See, because if you're trying to be president because you want to be president, you're a politician. You're not a statesman. I think that we should have people that are like, okay, I did not secure the seat of the presidency, but I'm going to do my civic duty and I'm going to do my job. I am going to faithfully discharge the office upon which I am about to enter to the best of my ability. And then everybody would say, okay, well, you're being a statesman. You're a gracious loser. But I mean, we've got people right now. What was the one senator or the one congressman? One congressman lied about his credentialing, won the election, and has said, well, yeah, I lied, but I still intend to serve in Congress. If we had statesmen, if you lied about your credentialing, then your own party should be lined up to crucify you. Your own party should be like, it should be like the opposition party should be waiting for the minority leader or the majority. If you're a member of the majority party, the majority leader should come out and say to the minority leader, hey, first order of business, we have to do an impeachment. We have to do a removal. We have to get rid of, he's got to go. I'm his party leader, and I'm saying he's got to go. He lied. We can't have that. If it's the other way around, the majority leader should be waiting for the minority leader to show up that day, not say anything, not be like, hey, I'm impeaching your guy. Should give the minority leader a chance to show up, and the minority leader's like, yeah, I got to impeach my guy. It's going to hurt. I'm going to lose a seat. I'm already the minority, and I'm going to lose a seat, and we have to go back to our state and have a special election because this guy lied. But how can anybody treat it seriously that there is a congressperson, a representative, who lied about his credentials and then said, but I still plan to serve? No. You don't get to serve. You lied. You lied to the American people. Yeah, grumpy old man, it would have changed the last 2 years with the VPs voting in the Senate. Can I be honest with that as well? I think that provision in that clause needs to go away. I believe that provision in that clause needs to go away. If we end up with a deadlocked Senate where we're 50-50, then bipartisan votes means if we want to really be representing the people, we shouldn't have a gotcha bitch vote where there's no quorum, or I'm sorry, there's no crossing party lines to get something done. I think that and I get it when we needed to have the vice president to vote. I understand it's meant to be a tiebreaker. It's meant so that things can push through. But I also think that we have major problems with the way the entire system works now. I don't believe bills should be introduced by the Senate. I think bills should only be able to be introduced by the House. I think that senators should be there to deliberate, and I do not think that there should be a Senate version of a bill and a House version of the bill, and then the parties get together, reconcile, and figure things out. I think that's all bullshit. I think it's all crap. I think it's all part of the problem about why we can't get anything done. I believe the way it should work is this: the House proposes the bills except for treaties and except for the budget or the nominations and all that, all the stuff that the Senate has specific enumerated powers over. I think the Senate should be there as the gatekeeper. I think the Senate should be saying, hey, this bill's not good, kick it back. If you want to get this bill through, it's going to need a 30% reduction in funding. Because right now, yeah, the Senate is supposed to be deliberative and less likely to change anything. Exactly. I think people have forgotten what the Constitution says. I think people have forgotten what the intentions of having a two-house system is. The purpose of having a two-house system is that one house is the trying to get stuff done, the busy bees. The House of Representatives is supposed to be the busy bees. They're trying to get a lot of stuff done. And the Senate's supposed to be the gatekeeper. Nope, you can't do that. We control the purse strings. Nope, you can't do that. There's no money for that. I saw this ridiculous thing in Buffalo. I'm talking federal reform, but it has to happen on the state level too. The Buffalo Bills are getting $850 million to build a new stadium. 3 days prior to that announcement, an $800 million funding package for children in poverty $800 million in funding for children in poverty was taken away. It's so surreal to me. The Buffalo Bills are worth $2.3 billion or something, and they just got an $850 million kicker to build a new stadium. Meanwhile, there's going to be hungry children. That is so jacked up to me. But the worst part is, here's who I blame for that. I blame the residents of New York. I blame the residents of New York because they're still going to go to that new stadium. They're going to be proud of their team. They're going to be proud of that stadium. Children are going to starve to death because you wanted a new football stadium. I don't know. I think maybe there would be a really easy way to not have stuff like that happen. Tax money can't go to sports teams anymore unless the city itself is going to own the stadium. If the city owns the stadium, I'm okay with that. The state owns the stadium. I'm okay with that. You built a stadium. It's not the Buffalo Bills then have to pay you to play their home games there, but they don't have to worry about the cost of maintaining a stadium. But what does that mean? You don't get the $12 beer money. You don't get the $17 stale hot dog money. The city does. The city runs it. And that's another thing. If you want election reform, we need country reform. The United States needs to be allowed to be run as a business. As a business. And we'll talk about that in a future podcast, but just to put the bee in your bonnet now, the country needs to be able to run as a business. I think when we talk about the idea of clean bills, if you want to reform the government, then the way lobbying is done needs to change. Lobbying is now a profession. Lobbying used to be, I'm Jahlon, I'm the common man, and I'm Jahlon, I'm the common man, and I have an issue, so I get a group together and I go lobby to my representative and we try to get things done, and then that's it. I go away. You want to say no, look at the post office? Yeah, I will look at the post office. The post office is the result of trying to run things not as a business. The post office isn't run like a business. The post office is not run like a business. The only part about the post office is that you pay for the mail. You pay for the postage. Because without it, if you didn't pay for the postage, then there would be no mail. There would be no... The post office operations would completely destroy the economy. Why? Because it's not run like a business. They change it from government run to run like a business, and this is where we got. No. It's not run like a business. I'm telling you, it's not run like a business. It absolutely is not. It's run as a form of monetization. It's not run like a business. Because you have all of the government rules saddled on top of the post office. It's not run like a bad business. See, TL, I don't... If people want to say, if we want to do an entire episode on the post office, I can do an entire episode on the post office. The problem is when you say, we're going to do things, we're going to run it like a business, but you've got to follow through with these 700 pages of things we're telling you have to do. Well, then it's not a business anymore, because I can't do the things that I have to do. Right? For example, the post office example, real quick, jumped down a rabbit hole. Amazon went to the United States Postal Service and said, we want you to handle all of our 2-day delivery. And the post office said, sure, we'll handle it. But because it takes so long to hire for postal workers, Jeff Bezos says to the USPS, I want you to deliver all of our 2-day packages. And the post office says we can do it. And they negotiate a rate. But it took so long to onboard the additional delivery people because of government regulation. Jeff Bezos started his own in-house distribution network faster, from nothing to implementation, faster than the United States Postal Service could onboard people to handle packages. Think about that for a minute. Amazon did not have a delivery system in place. All those Amazon trucks that go to your house and drop off your stuff from the distro center, they didn't have that in place. Amazon was able to build something like 50 facilities, build them, staff them, stock them. They were able to, at each of those facilities, acquire 10 to 12 vehicles per contractor, multiple contracts, sell the contracts, train the people. Those people that picked up the 10 to 12 truck contracts had to onboard staff, train them, start their own limited liability companies. All of that happened faster than the post office could onboard enough people to deliver packages. Pre-existing post office in my small little town, they could not onboard people fast enough. So Amazon now there's a guy, and I told you, I know the guy who owns the route. I thought about buying the route, but I didn't like the idea of, if I didn't have an employee that day, of me having to get up at 3 a.m. and drive a truck and deliver packages. It was a great idea. One of my brothers and I both thought about picking up routes. There's a ton of money to be made. 6 figures. You want to make 6+ figures a year? Become an Amazon subcontractor. But our post office here couldn't onboard people. I was talking to the post guy. He's like, it's going to take us 180 days to get one hiring cert. And I worked for the government, so I know how long it takes to get a hiring certificate. And they're like, we need to bring on 9 new postal carriers to handle all the boxes we're getting. There could have been 9 federal jobs created, right? 9 federal jobs created. But instead, the government's not run like a business. It's run like a bureaucracy, where you have to go from your regional post office or your local post office to the regional post office. Regional post office has to go to the accounting office, the hiring office, and they need to get a cert that allows them to onboard another employee. And it took them so long. Jeff Bezos was like, this is ridiculous. Appreciate the follow. It took so long to get this done. Jeff Bezos said, screw it, I'll just do my own thing. The government lost billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. Now UPS gets it, and FedEx gets it, and the independent driving companies get it. I agree, the post office is run horribly. I'm not defending the post office's results or efforts or anything. But the fact that the government saddled them with hundreds of pages of onboarding stuff, because remember, it's a government position. You got, like, and this makes me laugh. There were people that were applying for those postal positions that are disabled vets, and they have the right to. But those disabled vets can't get out of the van to carry an 80-pound package up to a door. So then they were excluded due to their disability, and then there's VA hearings, and there's Americans with Disability Acts hearings, and then Congress wants to know, and Congress people get involved, and it's a bureaucracy. If it was run like a business, the Postmaster General of the United States would be told, here you go, you're authorized to onboard 40,000 new employees, go. Get people hired. Get the right capabilities hired. Unfortunately, we didn't do it that way. Which is why it's a mistake to have the government deliver services. In its current state, yes, absolutely. It is a mistake to have the government deliver services. The only thing the government should be delivering is bombs, because it's what we're good at. Back to the clean bills thing. If you want to reform the government, then the way lobbying is done needs to be changed. Politicians should be forced to disclose all interactions with lobbyists, all of it. Every single interaction with a lobbyist should have to be reported. Period. Every interaction. Every single interaction. Every conversation. That would be a big pain in the ass. You're right, it would. And once you made congressmen and the senators and representatives accountable to recounting every single interaction with a lobbyist, there'd be less lobbyists. It's odd. This is what I find odd. If you guys are familiar with Public Law 110, 181, Section 847, because you're all familiar with Public Law 110, 181, Section 847, right? You're all aware of that one? It says that for 2 years after leaving the Department of Defense, certain senior officials are required to get a written ethics opinion from an ethics counselor before they can take certain positions post-military employment. There were certain positions I was not eligible to take for 2 years after leaving the military because of what I had done in my previous assignment and what I had done in the assignment that I was doing. Why is it that Public Law 115, 91, 105, 2 U.S. Code 1602 prevents DOD officials from lobbying contracts for 2 years? For former senators and representatives, it's 1 to 2 years. 1 year. So you're telling me a general who oversees a process has to wait 2 years from becoming a lobbyist, but a former senator or representative can become a lobbyist in 1 year? There's currently legislation, and there's always legislations. There's always legislation being proposed that makes it a lifetime ban on lobbying. And I think, honestly, once you serve in Congress, you should never be able to be a lobbyist. You don't need to be a lobbyist. Because you can do the Barack Obama, you can do the President Obama where he hasn't said much, but if you're a former congressman, a former senator, a former representative, if you speak, people should be listening because you should be a statesman. In fact, I'm going to be a little radical with this idea. People call for term limits all the time on senators and congressmen. There's already term limits on them. There's already term limits. It's called re-election. That's why we don't have that's why we don't have lifetime appointments to the Senate. Maybe that would change. Maybe if we changed things up a bit. I think a senator should just get elected for 10 years. I think a representative should be elected for 5 years. Let's stop having these bullshit elections all the time. And if you want to make it 8 years so it falls with the presidential election and 6 years so it falls with every other presidential election, I'm cool with that. But we spend so much time in the election cycle right now in this country. Like him, hate him, I think he's a lunatic, but there's a reason why Putin can do what he can do in Russia. Because he doesn't have to worry about winning re-election. You guys have heard me say this, and I'm not advocating. Well, I am. I'm advocating for King Jahlon. But I say it all the time. There's a reason why a benevolent monarchy is better than any other form of government. There's this bullshit that people say, and they say democracy is the best form of government that we've tried. No, it's not. It's not the best form of government that we've ever tried. A benevolent monarchy is the best form of government we've ever tried. The problem is finding back-to-back benevolent monarchs, finding back-to-back good leaders that have absolute power, finding people that serve with absolute power that don't get absolute corruption. But the people working the elections would freak out because they make money. As long as there's a defined available recall process, I could get down with this. Yeah, sure, and it's called impeachment. See, you hit the nail on the head. The fact that there is an industry, the fact that there are people who spend their entire life running political campaigns and that's all they do. We shouldn't need to have political campaigns. We shouldn't have to have these political campaigns. It should be a matter of, and I mean this with all sincerity, you know what America needs in 2024? President Obama back. The state should have a constitutional convention, void the amendment, or pass a new one, however that works. Repeal the amendment that was passed to stop FDR from having any more terms. And say, you know what, we need President Obama back. Because he's the closest thing to a statesman that we have. I think that putting a cap on politicians from being lobbyists is a great idea, because if you have been part of changing the laws, that should be your piece de resistance. If you've passed a major piece of legislation, that should be your piece de resistance. It's like Bernie Sanders. Some of you might feel the burn. No. Feel the burn. I don't. Because what has the man ever done? What groundbreaking, radicalized, sweeping change in legislation has Bernie Sanders ever championed, proposed, I'll do you one better, ever gotten passed? Nothing. He's done nothing. He's accomplished nothing. What irritates me about Bernie Sanders is and I hate memes and I hate the memer generation, but Bernie Sanders is absolutely the okay boomer. The things that you say don't even line up with each other. Like, you guys know I have a video called Taxing People into Poverty. And again, if you're going to say that the living wage is $31,800, I'm not going to say that people don't deserve a living wage. I'm not, because you do. Everybody deserves a living wage. I haven't made as little as $31,800 a year since my 20s. I don't remember what $31,800 a year looks like. So I don't want to say that you don't deserve a living wage, because I was in the right place at the right time with the right keys to open the right doors. The ability to earn a living wage, yeah, sure. I think one of the things I talk about it in the video that I did, and if you guys aren't familiar with this channel, this YouTube channel, you guys on Twitch, most of you on Twitch, in fact, all of you on Twitch, I have a YouTube channel where I have all sorts of things on. One of the things I talk about is taxing people into poverty. If you want the living wage to be $31,800, then you shouldn't pay any taxes on anything until you should only start paying taxes on your $31,801. And then you pay taxes on everything above what the living wage is. But with that said, how can you turn around and say that the living wage is $31,000, and then you start taxing people at $15,000? But the poverty line is $15,008, but the standard deduction is $15,005. You're literally taxing poor people. You're taxing people already in poverty. And maybe doing something you don't like, you can't refuse to work and yet still get a living wage. No, sure, absolutely. And like I said, there are tons of jobs that are out there. The problem I have, and when people are like, I can't find a job, it's always weird. You guys know I moved the politics away from my gaming show so we can have a focused show. Because the gaming channel draws out some really interesting characters, really interesting political views. It's always funny to me. People are like, well, I can't get a job. And I say, well, okay, I'll work with you. I'll help you. Send me your resume. You know how few of the mouthpieces ever take me up on the offer to review their resume? See, this is where I think the government is getting the raw end of the deal. Because it's easy to blame the government. Like I said when I started the show, I appreciate the fact that I live in the land of the free, the home of the brave, that I have constitutionally protected right to make this show. Now, my constitutionally protected right to make this show doesn't mean YouTube can't take it down, doesn't mean that Twitch can't take it down. They can absolutely do that because those are private platforms. Constitutionally protected rights just means that the government can't take it down. If I can't find a platform willing to host my message, that's a me problem. Does that mean I can't build my own platform to host my message? No, absolutely. I can build my own platform. I can stand on a street corner and do this as long as I pull the proper permits. The thing is people don't get it because people don't want to get it. People want to bitch and complain that my parents had it easier than me. You're right. Your parents did have it easier than you. But we get these millennial mouthpieces that only get their information through TikTok, and they don't understand the rest of the story. My mom and dad were able to go to college for $750 a semester. Yeah, and your mom and dad made $2,080 a year. So what's your point? Economy of scale. The rate of inflation, the rate of minimum wage hasn't kept up. The rate of pay for the worker hasn't kept up with the rising cost of inflation. Yeah, that's what happens when you have too many workers and not enough work. People get all mad at me because I'm not anti-union. I'm anti what union does. I'm anti what union does. See, because it's easy to blame the government for all of our problems, right? We can blame the government all day. Political reform, yeah, we need people reform. We need people reform. I tell you guys the story of Ford Heights. Name of the place is actually Ford Heights. It was named after the Ford Motor Company that had a plant there. Not all the Fords were made in Detroit. Ford Heights, Chicago. One side of the street was the Ford Motor Plant. Other side of the street was the American Steel Company. 3 times a day, a little train would chug its ass across the tracks and across the road and would deliver steel to the Ford plant so they could use it to make whatever they were making in that Ford plant. And then years went by and years went by and years went by, and over at the steel plant, the union got stronger and raised rates and negotiated and raised rates. And then one day the Ford Motor Company tells the American Steel Company, we're not going to buy steel from you anymore. At the end of this contract, we're not buying steel. And the American Steel Company said, are you closing the plant? And they said, no, we're not closing the plant. But it's cheaper for us to import steel from Japan than it is for us to buy steel from you across the street. Now, I want you to let that sink in for a minute. On the south side of Chicago, it was cheaper for them to buy steel from Japan, bring it all the way over from Asia. And by the way, transporting steel on the ocean is a costly endeavor because there's a lot of things you need to do to prep metal for being on a boat. It was cheaper for Japan to make the steel, incur the cost to transport it, get it up the Mississippi River to a plant in Chicago than it was for them to buy steel across the street. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that workers don't deserve the protections of a union. But I'm saying that if you force a rate of pay increase, then you're going to force a price increase. And if you force a price increase too much, then at the end of the day, you may find yourself without clients. You guys know I talk about political reform all the time because we need reform in everything. Name me something good going on in the United States. Name me something good that goes on that doesn't need any change, that doesn't need any improvement. The problem is this is similar to me writing a guide on content creation, which I got to work on. There is no starting point. It's kind of like you ever seen those hoarder houses on the A&E, and the people are like, we don't even know where to start, so they kind of just jump in the middle of it and they start cleaning it out. That's the government right now. That's the United States right now. And that's not just the United States. Don't think that the rest of the world is great and we're this chaotic, about to be apocalyptic world. The whole world's screwed up. But I can't speak intelligently on Canada and Mexico. It wasn't just the Union. U.S. iron ore is inferior to European and Asia. U.S. steel had a boom during World War II and during the rebuild. But once Germany and Japan's industry was rebuilt, they produced better steel for less money because the ore needed less processing. Absolutely. Absolutely. If I recall my global metallurgy, Scandinavian steel, Scandinavian iron is amazing because of its high carbon content. So much so that before the Viking metalworkers had even invented steel, their iron, because of the high carbon count of the naturally occurring iron there, their worked iron is as strong as steel, as strong as Spanish steel that was produced, just naturally occurring. And so, yeah, you get better steel for less money because the ore needs less processing. And, that's something that people don't want to understand. But we're in the middle of the chaos, man. We're in the middle of, there's no leadership. We don't have statesmen. And you know what the worst part is? I could spend the rest of my life doing True Fear Comes From Within. True Fear Comes From Within. It took me forever to come up with a name for the podcast. And the truth of the matter is, True Fear Comes From Within. Because we would rather bitch and complain and scream into the void than actually get behind people that can make a difference. I don't know who in the government, the sad part is, it's truly sad. You know the name Nancy Pelosi, you knew the name John McCain, you know the name Hillary Clinton, you know the name Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. I couldn't tell you, I couldn't tell you the names of my state senators. Why? Because they're inconsequential and they're not accomplishing anything, right? They're not doing anything. You got Tammy Duckworth and Dick Durbin. Tammy Duckworth is a great senator. If you're familiar with Tammy Duckworth, she is a disabled veteran. And Dick Durbin used to be Lurk doesn't work on this channel. Dick Durbin used to be a up and coming powerhouse, but he kind of fell off the radar. I have massive amounts of respect for Tammy Duckworth, because there was a guy testifying in front of the U.S. Senate, and he got caught taking a veteran's benefit. He never served in the military. He served in a military academy where he got his knee injured while playing football. And she asked him something, and I will never forget the interview. It's a great interview if you can find it. She said, "So you live in pain every single day?" And he's like, "Yes, I live in pain every single day." And she says, "From a football injury?" "Yes." "While you weren't serving on active duty?" "Yes." And he said something, and she responded with, "Yes, my legs hurt too, wherever they are," because she's missing her legs. The problem is that why is Tammy Duckworth and why is her name not well known all over the place for championing of veterans' rights? Well, it is, and she's trying. But the problem is we don't want to talk about things. And again, that's why I say we need election reform. We need election reform. We need to get statesmen into office, not people who just want to sit there. I'd go so far as to say we need a smaller government. We need a smaller Congress. I think we have too much. I think we have too much Congress. I think Congress is so bloated that we can't even keep track of what people are doing. We can't. And the answer is this: we need to focus on what? What do we focus on? Feeding people, housing people, training people, teaching people. You guys know a couple of weeks ago I did school reform. Can't have a better society if we don't get more school reform. But the fact is, even when major content creators like Princey A or Boy in a Band does this song "Don't Stay in School." Princey A does his video "I Just Sued the School System." Video gets those videos and songs get millions of views, millions and millions of views, and guess what happens? Nothing. We need a reverse Congress split. I don't know what you mean by that. We need to take the 435 and turn it into like 200. But yeah. Oh, a reverse split stock? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We have 435 voting representatives. I think that's too many. I think having 435 representatives is too many. Needs to be cut in. I don't even know what can we cut that into. Can we cut that into 4? Can we make that? I mean, unfortunately, if you try to divide that into 4, the smaller states are suddenly going to have a higher proportion. So if instead of California having 54 representatives, they suddenly had 13. Well, now Vermont has 1 and Vermont keeps 1 because you can't have less than 1. But I wouldn't have a problem with going down to 108 people in the House of Representatives. But again, like somebody said, election people would go insane because now you have 75% less elections being had. You have 75% less 75% less elections going on. Nancy Pelosi raises maximum pay for House staffers to $212. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. You're making $212,000 a year to serve your country. I don't get it. I don't. I do not. None of it makes any sense. None of it makes any sense anymore. Imagine the television networks don't want there to be less elections because they make money to run ads. Advertising marketing companies don't want there to be less elections because they make money making the ads. Newspapers and magazines don't want there to be less elections because they sell column inches. We have an entire species of political commentators, right? It's a whole industry, just like the tax industry, right? And one of these days, I'm going to do a tax reform show, but here's the punchline of the show. I can fix taxes really, really easy, right? I can fix taxes really, really, really easy. Option number 1, we don't have a federal income tax anymore. We just send the bills. We send each state their percentage of what they owe. All right. The budget is this. Illinois, you owe this much. Texas, you owe this much. California, you owe this much. Maybe that might spread the population out a little bit. But if you do it percentage based on people, well then, the states are there to figure out like, hey, California, do we do it based on percentage of people? Well then, the rich people will leave California. You know, there's no good way to solve a problem when you've allowed the process to get so big, when you've allowed the government to get so big that nobody even understands it anymore. Do we do a flat tax rate? Do we do 4 standard flat tax rates? Do we do federal sales tax and get rid of the IRS altogether? They're already leaving. Yeah. Well, the rich people are what the rich people are doing is, see, I have a major problem with poor people wanting to go after the rich people. I have a major problem for this, because I get that people think generational wealth is unfair. But I also want to say anecdotally, I'm a walking example of how generational wealth can be accumulated if you get off your fat ass and you work at it. Not everybody can raise themselves up by their bootstraps. Bullshit. Yes, they can. And I'm not the one who said it. Morgan Freeman is. I'm tired. I am just tired of people being woe is me, woe is me, woe is me while they're sitting in their house not doing anything. My father was an Irish immigrant who worked 2 full-time jobs and a part-time job to make sure that ends got met. My father worked a 40-hour-a-week job as an engineer. He worked a part-time job at a high school as their engineer. And then he worked a 3rd part-time dealio, making extra money, a side hustle, until he got to a point where he could launch his own side hustle and make more money. I'm so tired of lazy Americans crying and bitching and whining and complaining that the system is unfair. Saw somebody, I'm retired. I'm not. This isn't to inflate my own ego. If you think it is, I don't particularly care. I'm retired. In order to generate wealth for other people, I run my businesses. I don't draw a salary. I don't work at my businesses. Doesn't benefit me at all. It generates money for other people. I got up yesterday and I worked. And then I streamed, and then I hobbied. I shouldn't say I worked. I hobbied. I got up in the morning and I hobbied, and then I streamed, which is my hobby, and then I hobbied for another 6 hours, making 6 EDM singles. And then today I got up, and this is my hobby. This podcast is my hobby. After this, I'm going to talk to my wife, or if she's here, she may be running errands, and I'm gonna hobby another 6 singles. And I'm going to spend more time on my hobbies than some people spend on their hustles. And they're going to complain that they're broke and they're poor and it's unfair and woe is me and I can't get anywhere and inflation and boomers and you ruined the economy and your college was cheaper and this and that. I'm going to tell you, I saw a message on the Ashes of Creation Discord, made me want to puke in my soup. Somebody said, I said the people that are able to video game 12 to 16 hours a day are the people that are retired, the people that work from home, and the college students. And I said, and the college students that are doing it are wasting their education, because when you're in college, you shouldn't have free time. You're lucky enough to be able to go to college full time and not have a job, and you're going to class 2 hours a day, and that's the extent of which you're educating yourself. People call me egotistical. I'm not egotistical. I don't think I'm better than you. Performance metrics may indicate that I'm better than you academically. But I got a whole shelf full of books that I read. I download PDF books. I read a chapter of something every single day. Every single day I read a chapter of something. I take courses at MIT. They're free classes. I don't understand a lot of it, but I do that. My website designer wants me to be working in a version I don't understand, and I sit there and I struggle with it and I reference stuff until I get it. Something in my house breaks, I figure out how to fix it. Or I figure out that it's going to take me more time to figure out how to fix it than it will to just pay somebody else to do it. I will freely admit I despise yard work. I despise yard work. I hate mowing grass. I hate raking leaves. It has to do with my injuries. I have a landscaper because I can afford a landscaper, because I figured out 15, 20 years ago that I didn't want to be my father doing landscaping and yard work. My father is 80 some odd years old and he still finds joy and pleasure. He has a 20-acre former arborist experiment as his property. He still drops 7 or 8 trees a year for his firewood because he likes the feel of fire. He likes the smell of fire. He has different flavored wood. He has different fruit trees that were part of the experiment. He knows which trees he likes the smell of when they burn. They do burn different. So he chops those. He's in his 80s, 83, I believe, if memory serves. He still does that. I don't drop trees. If I'm up there and he needs help, I'll help him, not because I enjoy it, because he's my father. Yeah, if I couldn't afford it, I would do it. Exactly. The trick is, and this is where people are like, you're so egotistical, you're so condescending. No, I'm trying to, teach. I'm trying to lead by example. Rich people ask how much. Poor people ask how much down and how much are the monthly payments. If you can't afford it out the box, you need to take a better look at what you're doing with your life. I told the story yesterday. I'll say it here too, because it all factors in. I know people I went to high school with 25 years ago. I know a guy works third shift at the gas station. Been at the same gas station for 25 years. Was talking to him, checking up. He's a friend. I said, "You've never really done anything with your life." He says, "Jay, I don't want your life. I didn't want a wife. I didn't want kids. I didn't want to join the military. I didn't want to go to college." He's like, "I make enough money to have my apartment." And I said, "But 25 years later, dude, you could have had a house." He said, "I don't want to own a house. I've been in my apartment for like 20 years. I have my PlayStation. I have my Xbox. I have my computer. I have my cable. That's it. That's my life. I cook the food I want. I eat out when I want. I make enough money to do those things." Okay, if you're happy, you're happy. I also know a person that's same situation. Known them 25 years. They're working third shift at a gas station and they blame the world. It's not fair. You had opportunities I didn't. Okay. You and I were the same age, man. All our friends went into the military at 18. I went to college first. Why didn't you go to the military? Oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Told you guys a story on our when we had our senior party 25 years ago, right? 25 years ago was my senior year party, right? Is my math? Am I that old? Yeah, 25 years ago. Had a buddy, went to a senior party, and he was the ladies' man. He had the body of a Greek god, chiseled steel, shaped marble abs. Every girl wanted him. He had a very, very good graduation party. A very good time. As they said in The Mummy, he had a very good time. 9 months later, he comes back on leave from the military, hit with not 1, not 2, but 3 paternity tests. Shot 3 for 3, all his, 3 daughters. He goes back to the military. The military doesn't care. The military docked over 90% of his pay. Child support, mandatory child support. He ended up marrying one of the three girls. So he could get not one of his kids, one of the girls that had his kid. He ended up marrying one of them so that he could, number one, not pay child support. Number two, could get dependent rate, everything. Ended up having a couple other kids with his wife. All three of the girls turned 18 about 7 years ago. I talked to him at that point. He had a really good, successful military career. He said, man, my life didn't start. My life didn't start till I was 36. I said, yeah, that's what happens. Personal accountability. But now, doing good things in life. See, that's where I'm saying I'm trying to fire people up. I'm trying to get people to look at things. I'm trying to get people to get off their ass. Get out of bed. The 5-second rule. Mel Robbins, the 5-second rule. You want to do something? Get out of bed. Get out of bed in 5, 4, 6. Pretend you're, literally in the book, it says pretend you're a spaceship. There are days, because you guys, I don't have to get up. I can stay in bed till noon if I want. I want to get up. I want to work on something. I'm a spaceship. I'm going to launch. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go. Let's do it. Just be Nike. Just do it. You got a list of things you want to do. Do it. But the thing is, it starts with you. And then when you start working harder, that's going to directly come back to election reform. Because when you start actually working harder, you're going to start to get irritated that your politicians aren't working as hard as you are. But right now, you want everything handed to you. Not you, but you as the whole. Everybody wants everything handed to them. Why are taxes so complicated? Because H&R Block and TurboTax, all the tax preparation people lobby for tax changes. They lobby for just little tiny tax changes. Just to make it complicated enough that you need that. You think accountants that do tax prep want to see the tax code go to a flat rate? Ongoing joke. Happens all the time. The IRS knows exactly how much you owe them. They know exactly how much you owe them. But they won't tell you. Well, why not? Why don't they just send you a bill? Hey, you owe us this. You want to talk about why we need election reform? I'll tell you right now. I know that I'm naive. It's one of my flaws. I'm naive, and I say that if I was an elected official, I would make a difference. And I understand that that's bullshit, because I understand that one person can't make a difference. I saw a guy in Ohio. He got an $18,000 back child support bill for his daughter that died 15 years ago. I'm gonna just be honest with you. There should be an office of, and if I become Hegemona, if I become King Jahlon, every major city, every state is gonna have to have an office of getting shit done. My chief of staff isn't gonna be my chief of staff. My chief of staff's job title is gonna be guy who gets shit done. I think that there should be an office in City Hall called Getting Shit Done. The guy walks in with a piece of paper, say, hey, you sent me a $15,000 child support bill for my kid, or $18,000 child support bill for my kid that died 15 years ago. The manager of the office of Getting Shit Done would say, we did what? Who's getting fired? Come with me. Someone's getting fired. Walk up. Are you dumb? This man called you, told you that kid died 15 years ago? The accountant shortage threatens capitalist future. There's an ongoing accountant shortage. Yeah. You know why there's an accountant shortage? Because they're all tied up with all of the nonsense. I tell you guys, I run Paradox Gaming Network Incorporated. Paradox Gaming Network Incorporated, of which this channel is a subsidiary. Jahlon On is a subsidiary of PGN Inc. I run a cash method business. Do you know how penalized I am by the IRS because I run my business cash method? They don't like that. The IRS does not like cash method businesses. They don't like it because they get less taxes out of you. They get less taxes out of you because they get less projected taxes out of you. They don't get the taxes out of you until you have the money in your hand. As opposed to a accrual method of accounting where you may, if I send you a bill, I have to put that as a account receivable today. And if my quarterly taxes come due, I have to pay you money I don't even have yet. I want to say that again. I have to pay the IRS money that I don't even have in my pocket yet. I say in one of my videos on my Jahlon channel why 21.5% of small businesses fail in their first year. I don't know, maybe 21.5% of small businesses fail in their first year because they're busy paying the IRS taxes on money they don't even have yet. Firms promise higher salaries after a few years on staff. When you're 19 years old, you don't think about 10 years from now or even 5 years from now. You think about right now. See, I think you're absolutely right. And the big problem is nobody teaches kids to think from 65 backwards. And the moment you start thinking, and I say this to my kids, both my students and my children, I start with the idea. Hold on, I gotta fact check myself. Because it changes all the time. You can claim Social Security at 62. However, if you delay until 70, you get a bonus on your benefits. It's now 70. It's ridiculous. So this is what I say to people. Yeah, you can start claiming at 62, but you get the benefit if you wait until 70. Where's the yeah, at 62 you lose money. You actually take a penalty by taking it too soon. You have to wait until, if you take it at 62, you lose like 25%. If you wait, you get more. So what I say, you'll be taking out at 65, and yeah, but here's the thing, because I haven't had to work past 37, I'm gonna wait until the very end to take it, because why wouldn't I? But here's my problem. I tell kids, students, start planning your life out from 70 backwards. What is your life going to look like when you're 70? And we run through the exercise. What is my life going to look like when I'm 70? What is my life going to look like at 65, at 62, at 55? You guys, grumpy old man, remember when in our lifetime it was 55? Like 55 was Social Security age. It's unbelievable. It's like, yeah, it's 55. Now it's 70. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But the problem is I tell people all the time, what is your life going to look like at 70? When do you want your life to begin? When do you want your life to begin? And kids are like, well, I want my life to begin now. Okay, well, how are you going to make that happen? How are you going to make that happen? Because what we're stuck in right now is we're stuck in the Fight Club thing. Go to high school. What do? I call my dad. What do I do? Go to college. I go to college. I got my degree. I called my dad. What do you do? Get a job. Got my job. Called my dad. What do? Get married. Got married. Called my dad. What do I do? How should I know? Have kids. I never figured out anything beyond that. See, the problem is everybody wants it given to them. And then everybody wants to complain about when they don't get it. What they want to do is they want to say, I tried once, I failed once, it's a broken system. Thomas Edison, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. Guess what? The nice part is if you're trying to do a side hustle, the best part, you get multiple bites at it. You keep getting bites at the apple. You keep getting attempts to do your side hustle. My life sucks. Okay, well, what are you doing about it? Nothing. My life just sucks. The official retirement age is 67. Wait, you get a bonus less. And yeah. It's all over the place. Social Security is so hard to understand. It's like 62, you get a penalty. 67, you get your full rate. If you wait till 70, they give you bonus because you're not drawing. I don't know how that works with me. I'm gonna have to figure it out. But the truth is, just to be honest, I'm not assuming Social Security is going to be there. I'm not assuming Social Security is going to be there when I get there. Like 30% of the money that Tamir and I make go into our needs. 30% go into our wants. 40% go into savings. And then that savings makes money and compounds money. Well, right now Disney is completely destroying me, but you get the point. You get the picture. The problem is, and I'm saying this, it'll probably just be reduced. Yeah, probably. The problem, and this is what makes, and first of all, who in the Zoomer generation got a wild hair up their ass and decided they're going to start taking a go at Gen X? Gen X has been sleepily moving along, and now all of a sudden millennials have decided that the boomers aren't who they're going to pick on anymore. They're going to take a go at Gen X. I'm going to let you know. Anybody that's out there that thinks that taking a shot at Gen X is a good idea, Gen X doesn't care. Gen X, we don't care because nobody cared about us. For those of you that aren't familiar with generational divides, people that are my age and older are Gen X. 43 to 65, I believe, off the top of my head. We didn't break anything. Generation X... Generation X is the generation of kids that were kicked out of the house at 7 o'clock in the morning and told to come back at noon for lunch. Noon in the summertime for lunch was a sandwich, a couple of sandwiches, some chips, a juice on the deck or the picnic table or whatever you had, and then you were told, we'll see you at sundown, or we'll see you for dinner. Generation X was the generation of kids that could disappear for 12 hours and nobody cared. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have smartwatches. We didn't have check-ins. We left. We were gone for 12 hours. We'd come back with cuts and bruises and scrapes and our own stitches and our own triage. And because we got a cut and we didn't want to go home because we didn't want to be told we had to stay inside for the rest of the day and play. You'd come back with it was almost like Lord of the Flies, right? It was almost like Lord of the Flies. You'd come home with these big scrapes, these big bruises, and you would figure out how to triage that shit. You only went home if you couldn't stop the bleeding, right? You only went home if you couldn't stop the bleeding, and then generally somebody had an older brother and older sister who could sneak you out a gauze pad. We're the kids that, we didn't want to bother our parents, so we drank the water out of the garden hose. And guess what? We didn't die. We are the generation that was tempered by faucet water. And all we've done for the last 25 years is kept our head down. Leave us alone. We are the ones that were there before you, and we are the ones that will be there after you, and we just want to be left alone. Right? You won't ever forget accidentally drinking your dad's screwdriver he left in a pitcher in the fridge, thought it was just orange juice. And guess what? Back in that day, nobody would call children's services on that because that was just the sort of thing that happened. Now, you'd have children's services and the police and politicians and lawyers and newsmen out there, and they would make it all into a big hoopla. I don't know what's going on with the world, but the world is soft. The world isn't soft. You're soft. The world is hard. The world is a cold and bitter and nasty, dangerous place. And the generation of kids that are trying to navigate it now are whiny crybabies. And I'm sorry if you don't like me for saying that. There's a TikToker that made a video crying, a millennial crying in the back room of Starbucks. I need to be able to unionize because I have back-to-back shifts this weekend of 8-hour days. Where's the horrible, vicious employer? Their complaint was they had to work Saturday and Sunday 8-hour days. Dude, that's called not having a career. I'm sorry, and I'm gonna get fired up here for a second, but who lied to the millennials and telling them that barista is a career? Barista is what you do when you fail out of college. Barista, when you own your own coffee shop, is a career. When you are an actual barista and you own the coffee shop and you can tell me all about the beans and you can tell me all about all the different temperatures and why, right? And why, and this is, I'm gonna get hot because I'm tired of Starbucks employees thinking Starbucks is a calling, right? I'm gonna tell you. Oh no, my mug turned off. I can't jump into it. My mug knows more about coffee than the average Starbucks employee. My mug knows more because my mug is pre-programmed with 6 different temperatures to tell me what temperature each of my types of coffee should be kept warm at. My coffee mug has a heater on the bottom of it. I got a bougie coffee mug and that's okay. This little light here, where'd you go, little light? That little light there is a heating pack at the bottom of my coffee mug. If I'm drinking a latte, it keeps it to a certain, an espresso, a coffee, a black, because grumpy old man's gonna be like, it better know what black coffee's temperature is. And then hot chocolate. I deprogrammed tea for hot chocolate because I would never put tea in a ceramic mug. There's a huge difference between older and younger millennials. I lean more into Generation X habits, but I'm 5 or 6 off from them. Yeah, but I'll honorarily make you a member of Generation X because you have the same mindset and the same mentality. See, I love millennials that want to tell me anything about sociology. And then I ask them, I say, how many sociology classes have you taken? And they say none. I say, then where are you getting all this crap? And they say, TikTok. TikTok is not a source of education. It is not a source of education. 95% of the stuff on TikTok is education value F-. Somewhere along the line, all these, and I'm gonna get hot. I'm gonna get hot because we did the first part of our show. This is, this is the second part. I see on TikTok all these First Amendment auditors. All these First Amendment auditors that are going around being douchebags to cops just because they can. Do I think that we need audit the auditors? Yes. Do I think we need First Amendment auditors? Yes, I do. But here's something that I want to give a little wake-up call to some of these auditors, and they're gonna ruin it for everybody. I'm engaged in a First Amendment protected activity. I am a member of the press. Excellent. Can I have your press credentials? No. Then you need to leave. You can't make me leave. This is a public building. I can make you leave because you have said you are engaged as being a member of the press, and I have asked you for your press credentialing, and you're refusing to give it to me. Therefore, you're not a member. I'm not asking you for your ID. I'm asking you for your press credentials. I'm not asking you for your driver's license. I'm not asking you for your state ID. I'm not asking you for an international, federal, or domestic passport. I'm asking you to prove to me that you are, in fact, a member of the press. Now, it's interesting because in a really violent, engagement with law enforcement, I was there and they started yelling at me, and I don't like being yelled at. And I could have there's a lot of ways I could have gone about it. And I just looked at the police officer. He kind of grabbed my elbow. I said, are you comfortable with physically manhandling a member of the clergy? And he immediately took his hand off me. He's like, excuse me? I'm like, are you okay with physically manhandling a peacefully standing here member of the clergy? And it got his attention. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I'm an ordained minister and you're manhandling me and I'm doing nothing. I'm saying nothing. I'm just here bearing witness to the activities. I have my camera rolling. I'm not in your way. I'm not engaged in any of this. And he's like, well, we don't need you here recording. Why not? Because now you can call me to bear witness of these events. And up until you grabbed my elbow, I don't think you had done anything wrong up until then. But when you physically decided to grab my elbow and physically move me, I think that you're angry at something, but you shouldn't be angry at me about it because I'm just here. This is occurring in a public area. Now, there was a guy, I watched an auditor, and he came across a tactical unit about to do something, and they grabbed him and they took his camera, and he sued them and he lost. And he tried to say that he has the right as a member of the press to film anything he can see from a public sidewalk, which in normal cases, I would agree with you. I don't think you should, as a member of the press, be live streaming when the police are about to execute a SWAT warrant on a house, because you don't know if the person in the house is watching the live stream. If you guys remember the first Gulf War, Geraldo Rivera was embedded with a military unit. And this idiot, live on TV, had set up a little map on the ground with rocks and stuff and paperwork about where the military unit he was embedded in. And all of a sudden, if you find the footage, I think it's been struck from everywhere. A sergeant comes over, kicks his map over, takes his camera, throws him in cuffs, throws the cameraman in cuffs. And people were like, well, the freedom of the press. Freedom of the press is great until you're embedded with a military unit broadcasting live where the military unit is. And if you remember, in the first Gulf War, Saddam Hussein actually had a functional army that had the ability to shell and drop artillery, and he had an air force. I'm pretty sure that the military members want the people back home to know what's going on, but they don't want the Iraqi National or Republican Guard to know where to drop the bombs. See, the problem I have with citizens, I respect your right to go onto a public sidewalk and record whatever you can see from a public sidewalk. And I see a lot of these interactions with law enforcement to be ridiculous, because I see a lot of these engagements with law enforcement to be a product of the failure to educate both the police officer while he's in high school and to fail to educate the police officer when he goes to the academy about what people can and cannot do. Now, in the courthouse, there is no standard set of rules for the courthouse. Every courthouse has its own rules. The chief justice of the courthouse, the judge in charge, because there's always a judge in charge, writes rules for the operations of the courthouse building. Some courthouses you may not film in, period. And there are First Amendment auditors that go into courthouses, start filming, get arrested, and then they lose. And they're like, well, this is a public building. You're right, it's a public building that has rules. Access rules, access requirements. For example, there are military bases. They're all public property. Now drive up to one and try to access it. You can't, but it's public property. Can you film what's going on from a military base from the public? Yes. I'm going to guarantee you something very interesting. If we don't want you to know what's going on in that military base, you're not going to see it from a public easement. Period. It's just not going to happen. We have military bases that are hundreds and hundreds of acres big. Guess what we do? We put the buildings we don't want you to see deep in the middle of the 100 acres. It's like the 100 acres woods. Where's Winnie the Pooh in the pot of honey? Well, where you can't see him from the sidewalk. That's just the way it works. But I think the problem is we have a generation of kids that are growing up to be rude, and they're growing up to be constitutionalists. You guys know I talk about the one constitutionalist that drove through an agricultural checkpoint going into California. Constitutionalist drives through, says, I'll be on my way, and drove through. Said, this isn't customs, this isn't the border, you have no right to stop me. A constitutionalist is somebody who goes out of their way to cause issues or incidents in order to see if the responding police department or federal official knows the law. So anyway, there's a checkpoint. There's lots of checkpoints going into California from other states, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to make sure that bugs and critters and other things don't come through. There's this constitutionalist. He's got a load of agricultural product, and he pulls up to the checkpoint, and he literally just becomes a jerk. He's like, no, I'm not going to answer any questions. I want to be on my way. And the guy's like, I need a supervisor. And he's like, sir, you're not going to be on your way. I need to check. It looks like you have agricultural product back there. It needs to be inspected. He's like, do you have a warrant? He's like, I don't need a warrant. I'm not required to get a warrant. You're trying to bring in agricultural product across state lines. The state of California empowers me to check it. I don't, and it turns into this big deal. And the guy, the nice young guy doing his job is like, sir, I don't want to cause an issue. I don't want to inspect your shit. This is my job. I have to inspect your produce. I'm not interested in what's in your vehicle. But at this point, because you are acting rather suspicious, I am going to, in fact, look in your vehicle. You're going to have to roll down your tinted windows. I just need to see that you don't have agricultural produce in the back of the truck. Once I see that, I'll inspect your produce. You'll be on your way. The guy's like, nope, I'm going to be on my way now. And he drives off. He just drives through the checkpoint. A couple of miles down the road, he gets pulled over by state troopers. State troopers are not happy with him, said, I need your license and registration. And he said, well, for what? He said, because you violated an agricultural checkpoint. I need to give you a citation, and then you need to turn around. You need to go back to the state you came from. You can't be in California. Ends up turning into an almost hour-long affair. A sergeant ends up coming out. He gets there. He's in civilian clothes. And the constitutionalist is like, well, you can't be doing your job. You're not in uniform. And the sergeant's like, I don't wear a uniform. I wear civilian clothes to work. This is my badge. This is my badge number. Here is my ID. All the things he's required to do. And then he holds up his ID, but he kind of holds his ID up like, if this is the camera, he kind of holds his ID up like that so that the guy could see it, but the camera couldn't. He's like, well, can you put that up again? And he's like, no, I won't do that. You're recording. You saw it. If you'd like to see it, you can step out of the vehicle. I'll show it to you, but you're not going to record my ID. And I was like, well, why not? He's like, because you're not going to record my ID. You're not going to make a copy of it. And this thing goes on and on and on. And finally, the sergeant's like, look, man, I'm trying to get you on your way. I need your driver's license and your insurance because this is a traffic stop. I want you to go back to Arizona. I think it was Arizona. And then you'll have to appear in California for why you came through or thing. He's like, well, I'm not going back to Arizona. I live in California. The sergeant's like, then you know the law, or you should know the law. I don't want to be here. I want to go home. And the guy's like, well, I want to go home too. He's like, great, then give me your driver's license. Drive back through the checkpoint. Let him inspect your stuff. I'll even go with you to make sure that you don't have any other problem. The guy's like, I'm not giving you my license. He's like, well, then I'm going to break the window and I'm going to pull you out. I'm going to pull you out of the vehicle. See, that's when a constitutionalist needs to learn you've lost. And then you win in court. And guess what? They ended up going to court. And the judge completely destroyed and obliterated the constitutionalist and said, if you're going to be a constitutionalist and you're going to do First Amendment audits, you need to understand the First Commandment. You need to understand the First Amendment. Nothing that you did was legal. Nothing. And the guy ended up getting sent to jail. Waste of public, and the judge threw books like volumes at him. See, I don't mind the good constitutionalists, the good auditors going out there and doing things. Like, you guys know I had an issue with, I got stopped for suspicious person. I have migraines. I have insomnia. It's 5 o'clock something in the morning. I was taking a walk. I was wearing this hat. And I mean, it looked something, I don't have my Oakleys up here, but it looked something like this, right? It's 5 o'clock in the morning. I look something like this, but I'm wearing my Ashes of Creation hoodie, which on the sleeve and the back has white glow in the dark icons. This cop pulls up next to me as I'm walking, and he says, he starts talking to me. He's like, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? I say, no, good morning. I'm on my walk. I'm not feeling it right now. I'm not really feeling too personable right now. Have a good day. I walked away. The cop's like, you need to stop. I said, dude, no, I don't need to stop. I'm not required to stop. I'm a disabled vet. I'm not in a good headspace right now. Just leave me alone. I'm not interested in being checked on. If it's a health and welfare check, duly noted, go away. The guy drives down, gets out of his car, gets on the sidewalk, and stops me. He physically gets in my way. I was like, am I being detained? He said, yes. I said, great, do your Terry frisk. He kind of looked at me, didn't know what it's like. You could tell his brain couldn't catch up. I said, do your Terry frisk. Kind of looked at me and stared at me. I said, articulate your crime that you're stopping me for. He without missing a beat, says suspicious person. Is that felony or misdemeanor, suspicious person? And he kind of looks at me and said, call the shift supervisor. Or let me be on my way. And he calls the shift supervisor. Shift supervisor comes out and starts talking to me. I said, I'm gonna make this real simple. Your guy doesn't know the law. You need to take this rookie back. You need to teach him the law. He cannot stop me on being a suspicious person. He needs to have a reasonable, articulatable crime that he believes that I have committed or I'm about to commit. And he didn't do that. Supervisor walks away from me for a minute, comes back. He's like, you're on your way. I said, I need my stop ticket. The supervisor's like, what? I'm like, I need my stop ticket. I need your badge numbers, your names. I need to know what the file number is going to be on this stop. And he's like, oh, we're not going to write it up. No, you are going to write it up. I need my stop ticket. I have a legal right to it. So he gave it to me. While later, I got detained for suspicious person again. I guess wearing black and a black hat and sunglasses makes you automatically a criminal. And then that didn't turn out well. That had some more, there was some more muchness to the ramifications there. That's my problem. And that's why we need political reform. We need political reform because the only way that we can get reforms to schools and police and medicine and social security is if we start. I mean, I don't know where to start. I guess we got to start with school reform. Somehow we got to figure out a way for schools to get reformed so we can grow up a generation of statesmen who can get elected, and women, statespeople. I'm old. Whatever. We need a generation of statespeople who can take over and make the changes to the government that we need so schools can get reformed, medicine can get reformed, drugs can get reformed. You know, it's like trying to change the tires on a moving car. That's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is. It's trying to change the tires on a moving car. And the saddest part is we're never going to get anywhere. It's what we're trying to do right now is we're trying to saddle a cow. We're working like hell, but what's the point? We're never going to get any changes. Like, for example, you guys know, some of you are gamers. Most of you met me as gamers. And a lot of people say what Epic Games Studios did, they have a really bad store. People hate Epic Games Store, all these things. I'm like, I always ask them, I'm like, you hate the Epic Games Store because it's missing some features. Yeah. Did you know when they give away games, they pay the developer their royalties on the games they give away? People are like, wait, what? I said, when Epic Games Store gives away a game, they give the publisher, the developer of that game, their royalties on a sale, even though the sale price was $0. That's why there's a dollar amount. It's scratched through and it says $0 free. Steam doesn't do that. That doesn't happen over on Steam. This is why I tell people, if you want to help in the video game world, if you want to help small developers, claim every single free game Epic ever puts out. That way the developer is getting royalties. I must have 300 or 400 games in my EGS library. I'll never play most of them, but I'll claim them so that a developer makes money. Well, what did that do? It changed the market. So I'm very proud of Walmart. I'm very, very proud of Walmart. I know that a lot of you guys don't like Walmart for whatever reason. They won't let people unionize. Okay. They won't let people unionize. They don't pay their workers. They don't treat their workers fairly. This, that, the other, whatever. I get it. Walmart has $25 insulin. Walmart is so beyond fed up with overpriced insulin in America that they sell $25 insulin. $25 insulin. Why? Because if somebody starts selling $25 insulin, then that means the insulin market, the insulin people that are trying to keep a stranglehold on insulin are going to have to change. Otherwise, they're suddenly going to find that they're not selling $800 a vial insulin anymore. I get that people want to look at companies and vilify them. If you never let a company have a good moment, then companies are gonna stop trying to do good things because you never give them their good moment. Does Walmart need to change how they do things? Yes, absolutely. Does Walmart need to change things? Yeah. I made the joke last night on Reddit. Every time you shop at Walmart, make sure you park in the back of the store, come in through the dock, help unload the truck that's there, take 20 items out to the shelves, stock the shelves. Then when you do your shopping and you do your self-checkout that you don't have any training to do, make sure when you're putting your groceries in your car that you police your cart and 3 other carts and then go home. I get it. Self-checkout is an abomination. Self-checkout is an absolute abomination, and Walmart should be ashamed of themselves for not only the fact that they have self-checkout, but they should be ashamed of themselves the way that they handle their self-checkout, in so much that what they end up doing is, if you forget to pay for a $3 item, you have $400 worth of groceries in your basket, and you forget to pay for a $3 item because it just falls in between, they will have you arrested for shoplifting. Now, are there some people that are trying to steal a $3 item intentionally? Sure, absolutely. This exact thing happened to me when I lived on base to my neighbor. She had the kid was sick, she had a bunch of stuff, cough medicine. You know where the cart is, how the piece of the cart goes up like that, and you get that little void where stuff gets stuck in? Her cough medicine dropped down there, and it wasn't even self-checkout. There was a worker that was supposed to look at the basket to make sure it was empty, the cart. It wasn't empty. She got all the way out to the parking lot and realized she hadn't paid for it. She only got caught because she walked back into the BX to tell them she had forgotten to pay for it. They called security forces. Her kid was with her, had her arrested, and I was like, this is ridiculous. Luckily, the leadership on the base realized it was ridiculous and said, this is the dumbest thing that we've ever heard of, and this is absolutely how we're not going to police the BX. The individual was walking back in to say that they'd forgotten to pay for something, and you're going to then arrest them when you didn't even notice. Your security protocols had completely failed. The person got out of the store without it. And then I remember being there when the commanding officer said, we live by a core value of integrity first. And that does not apply to the spouses, but we hope that it does. And this spouse is demonstrating the core value of integrity first by coming back in with the unpaid for item, and we're going to arrest them. This is a complete failure. That's good leadership. That's a person who should make the transition to political leader, because that's a statesman. That's a statesman. That's not a politician. That's a statesman. And that's what we need. We need statesmen. We need more of that. We need more good leadership in our government. We need more of the good stuff. The problem is we're not getting enough for the good stuff. We're not getting, like, sure, the Walton family made bazillions of dollars on Walmart, Sam's Club. Elon Musk makes a ton of money on Tesla. Blows it all on Twitter, but makes a bunch of money on Tesla. Mark Zuckerberg makes a ton of money on Facebook, loses it all on Meta. Jeff Bezos creates Amazon from the ground up, but then people vilify him because he's too rich. I'll never understand that. I'll never understand it. Talk about changing the wheels on a moving car. We gotta get people out of the habit of thinking that they have some sort of right to the rich's money. Nothing is stopping you from being rich. Nothing is stopping you from being a politician. Nothing is stopping you from doing those things. If you want to do those, if that's really what you want, if it's your why, if it's the thing you want, you'll find a way. If it's not, you'll find an excuse. Like you said before, the only people running for office are those seeking power. We need to force more of the right people to run. Hey man, I'll be honest, all they need to do is show up at my door. I'll put on my senatorial toga and accept the mantle of dictator and fix some stuff. Grumpy old man, you can expect a phone call if that happens, because I'm gonna be like, they're talking to me about internet protocols and changes and get the grumpy old man, get him up here. Hey, your job, fix the ISPs of the entire country. And you're gonna look at me and be like, why do you hate me? Be like, well, fix the shit, fix it. Speaking of fixing ISPs, I need to fix my internet in my house. I got to figure out what's going on. I upgraded to gigabit. It works everywhere but my office. So I got to look at cables today. With that said, I want to say thank you to everybody who shows up to this show. This show goes on every Saturday. This is an every Saturday show. So next, I think what we're going to talk about next week is we kind of got there. We're going to talk about tax reform. I also wrote down post office as a business. Spell the rest of that acronym out. We're going to talk about the post office as a business. And then if you guys have stuff you want me to talk about, bring it. Let me know. I love doing this show. This is like my 2 hours a week to like dive back into that teacher mentality, talk about things, bring things up, and it keeps the politics off of the gaming show. I think that was one thing people were starting to get fed up with me about. You go to a video game talk show, you want to hear about video games. You come to a politics talk show, you want to be able to just talk. Absolutely just talk. And this is great. This is what we need more of. We need more people talking about the problems of the world, because as soon as we start talking about the problems of the world and we don't get divided by the mainstream media's distractions, then we're going to be able to be like, hey, politician, if you want to stay in office, you better tell us how you're going to fix this issue. But like I said at the beginning of the show, spread this idea around, because ideas are infectious. We need to have an amendment added to the Constitution that at any time the budget isn't within 3% of the gross domestic product, every sitting congressman, both senator and representative, immediately becomes ineligible for re-election. If we could get the states to do a constitutional convention and make that an amendment, that would be the first step to changing all of the nonsense that we have going on. With that said, it is New Year's Eve. I'm going to get out of here. We're going to get ready to ring in 2023. For those of you that are fans of PGN Music, there is a single dropping in 1 minute over on PGN Music. And then every Tuesday for the month of January, there's going to be an EDM single dropping. I'm going to be putting together some orchestra singles. Hopefully that's going to push us out till February or March. And then I will see you guys on the gaming show on Monday for more gaming stuff for our first show of 2023. Take care. No drinking and driving.